I was sweeping the floor of my roadside gas station at 2 in the morning when the front door slammed open. A young man in his early 20s vaulted over the counter and squeezed under the cigarette display. His face was pale, and his chest was heaving so hard I thought he'd pass out. "If anybody asks," he gasped, barely breathing, "you haven't seen me. Please." 10 seconds later, a dark blue minivan pulled onto the lot with its lights off. Two heavy-set men stepped out, scanning the empty pumps. The driver tapped a ring on the glass and yelled inside, "Hey man, you see a kid run past here? Gray hoodie, torn jeans?" My heart was pounding like a jackhammer. I had no idea who this kid was, but the look in that driver's eyes told me everything I needed to know. Without thinking, I pointed toward the dark woods behind the car wash. "Yeah," I shouted, keeping my voice steady. He ran toward the tree line, moving real fast. The guy jumped back into the minivan and sped off, tires screeching on the asphalt. I stood there with my broom, taking a deep breath. The kid slowly crawled out under the harsh buzz of the fluorescent lights. That was when I got my first real look at him. He wasn't wearing shoes, just torn, muddy socks. His wrists were bruised purple, his knuckles split raw, the hands of someone doing brutal, forced labor. "Thank you," he whispered, trembling. "I can't go back there. I can't." I grabbed my master key, led him into the locked back office, and threw the deadbolt. I wedged a chair under the knob, then handed him a bottle of water and a box of donuts. He practically devoured the food, shaking so hard he could barely hold the bottle. His name was David. 14 months earlier, he'd answered an online ad for a warehouse job 2 states over. Housing provided, meals included. It sounded like his ticket out. The reality was a nightmare. The housing was a cramped basement with 9 other men. The paychecks never came, because management deducted money for rent and food, until every worker was thousands of dollars in debt. Supervisors kept all their ID cards locked in a safe. "There were no fences," David said, staring at the floor. "They just told us if anyone ran, they knew where our families lived." Tonight, a guard left the safe unlocked for 5 minutes. David grabbed his driver's license, kicked out a low window, and ran 3 miles through freezing mud. I immediately dialed 911. I gave the dispatcher our location, described the minivan, explained everything. She told me to keep the office locked, that officers were 5 minutes out. That's when bright headlights swept across the blinds of the back office window. The minivan was back. Heavy footsteps pounded through the store, and then a fist slammed against our door. It was a loud, aggressive knock, wrapped in a fake, friendly tone. "Hey buddy, open up! Our cousin got confused and ran off. He's got severe mental health issues. We just want to get him home safe." David pressed into the far corner, hiding behind paper boxes. He went completely silent, curling into a ball like a terrified child. "Nobody in here," I yelled back. "I told you, he went into the woods." A pause. Then the doorknob slowly turned. "We know he's in there, man," the voice hissed. "Open up, and nobody gets hurt." The wood frame groaned as they threw their weight against it. The chair began to slide. I grabbed a heavy crowbar off the shelf and stood between the door and David. Then, sirens. Beautiful, loud sirens echoing across the lot. The footsteps sprinted away. Outside, tires shrieked, followed by shouting over hailers. Through the blinds, I watched troopers force both men onto the pavement in handcuffs. An hour later, federal investigators arrived. They took one look at David's hands, heard his story, and secured a warrant. By sunrise, 9 other trapped men were freed. A week later, David called his mother from my office phone. I didn't need to speak his language to understand the sound of a mother crying tears of pure joy. Before victim services drove David to a shelter, he stopped at my counter. "Why did you lie for me?" he asked. "You didn't even know me." I told him, "Nobody runs like that unless they're escaping hell." Today, David works as a manager at a local company. Every Friday night around closing, he stops by the station. I brew fresh coffee, he brings pastries, and we sit on the curb in the quiet midnight air, knowing he never has to run again.